So Noranda was a company that had a very profitable, very well located aluminum smelter on the banks of the Mississippi River in the Boot Heel region of Missouri. Not a wealthy part of the country, but this was a company, this was a smelter, aluminum production that had 2,500 jobs, well-paying jobs, good benefits, health care, and the company had been there for many, many years, and this was a well-established smelter doing a tremendous business on the Mississippi. They could deliver their aluminum all up and down the country. Great, great company. Apollo comes in and buys it. And they promise that...
Let me just interrupt you.
Yes.
When a private equity firm like Apollo comes in to buy it, it's not always the case that the company is looking to sell. Is that correct?
Well, the company has to be willing to sell.
But aren't they able to pressure companies to sell against their will or not?
Well, it depends. Now, usually it's about money. So if it's a public company that has publicly traded shares and the shareholders are the ones who will then make the decision about whether the acquisition is made, generally what happens is that the company, that the shareholders say, great, I'm going to get a windfall. I'm going to get whatever premium to whatever the stock price was trading at when the acquirer comes in and says, I'll pay you $10 more a share. So generally speaking, the shareholders say, yay, let's do it. Let's do the deal. When it's a private company, you're then talking about persuading whomever owns it that they are better off taking the money and running. But it's almost always a premium they're paying, and so that gets people's attention, and the owners or the shareholders say yes. So Apollo comes in, they buy the smelter, they promise that they're going to do right by the 2,500 families whose, workers are there, and they immediately loaded up with debt. This was a company that did not have a lot of debt, and so it didn't have enormous interest costs. It didn't have to pay those costs.
I just want to ask, when they loaded up with debt, do they say, okay, these are our assets, and they put the assets, that's how they can get the debt?
That's
because
right.
They're putting the assets up as collateral?
Correct. So the asset is this smelter and this huge infrastructure, and they also had a very low cost of electricity.
Just interrupting again, is the debt used to pay for the acquisition?
Yes. The debt is used to pay for the acquisition, but it again allows the private equity firm to take the money out, right? They're loading the debt onto the company itself, not onto the private equity firm. So the company is the one that now has to struggle with the debt costs, the increased interest expense that's associated with the debt. So Noranda, they load it up with debt. Almost immediately, Apollo gets its money out, all of its money out.
Which it wasn't that much.
Wasn't that much. Maybe even like 6 months or something like that. They were able to extract all their money by putting the debt on the company, okay? So now Noranda is struggling under debt, under this debt load. Apollo then raises more debt. They ultimately make 3 times their money on the Noranda purchase. Meanwhile, the company starts to struggle,
and it
not
goes
surprisingly.
It goes under because it has to service the debt now.
It starts to struggle because it has to service the debt. So then Apollo says, wow, this is a problem. We need to negotiate with the state of Missouri's utility commission to lower our electricity costs, or otherwise we're going to leave. We're going to sell the company, take it somewhere else or something. So they negotiate with the utility commission a lower rate, even though it means that the other ratepayers in Missouri have to pick up the slack, have to cover that difference. Apollo gets the lower rate. It then starts to fire people because it can't make ends meet. The company is struggling. Again, the debt is too high. I think there may have been an economic, downturn. Aluminum wasn't quite as, in demand in any case, but it really was the debt that was causing the problems. The company ultimately goes bankrupt, but Apollo has made 3 times its money. So people are thrown out of work. They savaged 3 different pensions. The Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation had to come in and bail out 3 Noranda pensions because of the bankruptcy. They had ratepayers paying more across the state. There were school teachers, because Noranda was the biggest taxpayer in this small town in Missouri. All of a sudden, the tax base crumbled, and the school teachers had to pay their own health care costs because what Noranda owed for the school payments for its taxes was not paid because they went bankrupt.